Hey guys, how we doing? Back on another video from Too Spooky. It's been a while. I felt like doing some My Hero Academia video related stuff, seeing as Season 4 just finished and it was boss. I absolutely loved it. I just saved it. I binged up to the second to last episode, thinking it was the last episode, and then waited for this weekend to watch. Just gone. The last one. Loved it. So, doing some My Hero Academia related stuff this week, and we have got Too Spooky talking about the top 10 strongest quirks in My Hero Academia. Off the bat, All Might's All for One ability, obviously Decker's thing, it's got to be up there. Overhaul's ability was just insane. I was just like, what the hell? The girl with the horn, that's pretty OP, what she can do. Bloody hell, the guy that can control people's minds, when's he coming back? His ability was pretty decent. There's so many, and I don't know what he's going to put in the top 10, so let's see what he has to say.
How's it going, everybody?
Too Spooky here.
And in this video today, we are going to be counting down the top 10 strongest quirks in My Hero Academia. This is a video I've been wanting to do for a while, and I decided it's finally time to make it happen. Now, before we get into the actual list, there's a few things you need to keep in mind.
Right.
The first thing would be that my pronunciation of different Japanese names and phrases is terrible, so I'm likely going to mispronounce a few things throughout the video.
Perfectly fine.
Next, I need to quickly go over what characteristics are required for a quirk to be eligible for this list.
Right, okay.
Because this list is counting down the strongest quirks, the quirk in question needs to be rather powerful in some aspect.
Well, of course.
You see, for a quirk to truly be one of the strongest, I believe it needs to be able to do one thing. It needs to be able to cause a significant amount of damage to either people or the environment or both. Because if a quirk isn't able to cause any damage, I don't believe it can be considered one of the strongest.
Oh, okay.
This is of course on a case-to-case basis, because some of the quirks on this list fall into a different category of what could be considered damage.
Weird.
That's a lot of damage. How about a little more?
However, as you'll see, what I believe are the strongest quirks are those that I believe can cause the most damage or affect the most people.
Right, okay.
Now that's a lot of damage!
Alright.
Whether a quirk is used for good or for evil is not a factor in deciding their placement,
It's just the actual quirk
provide
itself.
reasonings for both hero and villain scenarios if necessary.
Okay.
There will be spoilers in this video for both anime and manga, so if you do
Hopefully,
not wish to be spoiled,
because I've seen Season 4 now,
click
there
away
won't
from
be spoilers in
video.
this. Hopefully.
And finally, I quickly wanted to mention that I will be making another My Hero Academia Top 10 once this video hits 3,000 likes.
Worst
and
quirks?
that top 10 will be the top 10 worst or weakest
We're going to
quirks.
check that out
So feel free
next.
to drop a like now if you want to see that video eventually come to
I'm
life.
excited because
Or feel free
Anime
to drop a like
Wins has done
after
everything
watching
great
this
about
entire
My Hero
video
Academia Season
to
4
decide
first
if
half,
it's
so I'm going to check
truly
that out.
worthy of that like.
And hopefully I'll have the
Either
second
way,
half done.
It's time for us to jump right into the list.
Alright.
Number 10.
Number 10.
Manifest. This quirk belongs to Tamaki
Oh mate, what an ability, yeah. He
Simply
eats
put,
something and
this
they can
quirk
use...
allows its user to temporarily develop or manifest characteristics of anything the user had eaten previously. These manifestations are also essentially different temporary transformations that can occur anywhere on the user's own body, such as
even
eating
the diamond
takoyaki and then being able to manifest tentacles. These transformations are also not limited to just one manifestation. The user can eat multiple different things
and do all the different ones at the same time. So good.
Transformations of each of these different things anywhere on their
when he
body
swallows that guy's diamond stuff and then can
so
use that
long
as
as the objects are still digesting in the user's stomach. The user can also mix these different manifestations together to create new and interesting techniques.
So cool.
And the objects that the user can manifest are also not limited to only food, as we've seen him use manifest with a crystal taken from someone else's quirk.
That was boss.
So it seems as long as the object can be consumed in some way, it can be used as a weapon. Personally, I think this quirk is pretty underrated, simply because the possibilities with this one are seemingly endless. Essentially, anything that can be consumed by the user can be transformed into a potential weapon or technique. So instead of going on and on about every possibility, let me just name a few examples as to why this quirk could easily be one of the strongest. We've already seen that various foods, or animal meat, can be manifested into that animal's respective offensive offensive or defensive characteristics.
Yeah.
So in theory, the user could consume something like a bee to transform their arm into gigantic
don't do
stingers
that.
like a real-life
that's freaking me out to see that on screen. I hate those things.
Snake meat to develop venomous fangs
Oh my
or an
god,
extendable
become a Orochimaru.
neck like a Orochimaru from Naruto.
Whoa.
With this quirk, you automatically have every animal's natural weapons or defenses at your disposal. Because there are countless dangerous animals in the world, assuming these same animals exist in the My Hero Academia universe, each of these animals could easily make the user of this quirk an unstoppable hero or a ruthless villain. Now, this alone wouldn't make this quirk one of the strongest in my opinion. However, what I do believe makes this quirk one of the strongest would be the fact that other objects can be manifested, such as those crystals from the crystallization
that definitely
quirk.
shows you
I want to
how
clarify that we don't know this for sure, but if the user can consume and manifest these crystals, they can likely do this for any object in the world. Imagine the user swallows a piece of steel.
God.
They then have the ability to transform their body into steel. The possibilities are honestly endless if this is the case. The user could even go as far to eat something like uranium or a separate nuclear substance to transform themselves into a radioactive bomb, which would be devastating if the quirk's user were a villain. This already makes me believe that this quirk is worthy of being in the top 10 strongest.
Definitely, when you put it like that, it's
this quirk could go even further. What if, and this is
ultra?
A big what if, the user is able to manifest other quirks simply by consuming the DNA of another person?
Ooh.
You see, the crystal that Tamaki consumed was taken from Yu Hojo's quirk, crystallization, which means that these crystals could be considered an extension of
his
Yu Hojo's body,
right?
and therefore his DNA.
Jesus.
If this were the case, Tamaki was able to manifest the crystallization quirk through Yu Hojo's DNA, meaning he could likely do this with other people's quirks as well. Say, for instance, he consumed some of Bakugo's hairs. This could potentially mean that Tamaki could manifest explosive sweat and ignite it just like Bakugo, meaning this manifestation quirk could essentially be a way to temporarily copy other quirks similar to the copy quirk, but to a much greater extent. Because of that possibility and the many other possibilities with this quirk that we didn't even mention, I can't help but believe this is one of the strongest. However, this quirk does have a handful of downfalls, and a lot of what I said earlier is only speculation. Like I mentioned, this quirk works with objects or food the user consumes. So if the object in question is debatably unconsumable, I doubt the user could use it to their advantage. Because, let's be real here, not every person has the iron stomach quirk like Shoe Knight. So it's pretty unlikely that Tamaki is going to be able to consume something like steel or uranium without, dying.
A bit ill.
So the objects are limited to foods or objects that are safe, or at the very least relatively safe, for the user to consume. So unless Manifest also grants the user the Iron Stomach quirk as a little bonus, the potential for this quirk is unfortunately limited. The other big drawback would be the fact that this quirk requires outside sources, which in this case is food and objects. To even use this quirk at all, you need to eat. Because if you get caught in a sticky situation on an empty stomach,
you're screwed because you got nothing.
So the user of this quirk either needs to constantly have something in their stomach, which also means
he does
that
carry
the
stuff
user
around in his belt,
doesn't he? Carry food with them at almost all times. So that right there automatically gives this quirk a pretty large handicap. Depending on the ability you want to manifest, you also need to pick and choose what foods you eat, and possibly go out of your way to get certain foods or objects
I need to
that
have an
may
advantage.
be harder to
I'm
acquire.
just going to the shop.
And if you're in a dire situation, you may even run out of food, or mid-fight your stomach could finish digesting and you no longer have anything to manifest. So bottom line with Manifest, it has so many different possibilities and potential manifestations, some of which are even powerful enough to take down the strongest of enemies. However, this quirk also has just too many downfalls for me to put it any higher than 10 on our list. But regardless, because it has the potential to be so powerful, Manifest is our pick for number 10.
I can't agree with that. That's 9. Class. That's really cool.
Dark Shadow.
This
quirk belongs to Fumikage
Oh, mate, when it goes mental in the forest,
grants its user, Fumikage, the ability to materialize a sentient monster or creature that is made completely out of darkness energy, which is called Dark Shadow. Dark Shadow is always connected to Fumikage, and cannot separate from his body, although it is able to stretch itself quite far away from Fumikage without actually physically detaching from his body. The two of them may be connected, but they do not share the same body.
No, they are.
What I mean by this is both Fumikage and Dark Shadow have their own mind, feelings, etc. So any pain or feeling that Dark Shadow feels will not be felt by Fumikage.
Could you imagine? That would be such a disadvantage.
Dark Shadow is capable of stretching and expanding its form to impressive lengths, and generally attacks by stretching its arms to grab, slash, or slam its enemy with immense force.
Okay.
Its attacks are usually the result of commands from Fumikage himself, but Dark Shadow will also act on its own will to protect Fumikage from any and all dangers coming his way, showing that the two work as a team. This also makes Dark Shadow one of the more versatile quirks for both offense and defense, as it can easily act as both, along with support in certain aspects. Fumikage is also able to equip Dark Shadow to his own body as a
cool
form
when he
of
started
armor,
to do that, man.
While it's unknown exactly what advantages this technique provides, Fumikage mentioned that wearing Dark Shadow like this removes the majority of his physical weaknesses. Now, just by the general description of Dark Shadow, it seems pretty powerful and useful, but nowhere near the top 10 strongest, right? That's because there's a little bit more to this quirk. What can potentially make Dark Shadow beyond powerful would be darkness itself. Or better put, Dark Shadow's potential comes from the amount of light in the area. The less light, the more powerful Dark Shadow will be. Under a great amount of light, such as under the sunlight, Dark Shadow is rather small and docile in nature, which makes it much easier for Fumikage to control. However, even under a great amount of light, Dark Shadow is still exceptionally good at protecting Fumikage from different attacks, but when it comes to offense, Dark Shadow isn't near as strong as usual. However, that doesn't mean it's completely hopeless.
He's still pretty strong in light,
as it can still deal a good amount of damage. But when it comes to barely any light or even complete darkness, Dark Shadow becomes what can only be described as a raging monster. In the darkness, Dark Shadow becomes massive in size, and with this immense size boost, its strength also greatly increases. We saw from just one brief appearance that this monster version of Dark Shadow is able to easily chop multiple trees down with just one slash of its claws, and it was also able to easily overwhelm Voldo's edgy cousin, even though he was an experienced villain with a very versatile and deadly quirk. His defenses were easily broken, and he was defeated quickly by Dark Shadow. The only downfall of this version of Dark Shadow is that it is very hard for Fumikage to control, and at a certain point it will even take over Fumikage's body and force him to bend to its own will. This version of Dark Shadow will also not discriminate, and instead attack anything that moves, be it friend or foe. So why do I believe this quirk is worthy of the top 10 strongest? Well, it's pretty simple actually. Just from the basic description of this quirk, I can already see that it's very well-rounded for the majority of circumstances. However, I believe that even Izuku stated that Dark Shadow is almost impossible to beat in any one-on-one battle. It's good for offense and great for defense.
It does both.
So it's already a great quirk. But what truly makes this quirk shine as one of the strongest is how powerful and deadly this quirk can be in complete darkness. If it can easily level trees and defeat powerful villains in mere seconds, this quirk could be devastating against almost everyone. In fact, the only quirks that would be able to stop this beast would be those that produce some sort of light, such as explosion quirks, flame quirks, and even though I hate to say it, I think the glowing baby that started it all would probably be able to solo Dark Shadow. But if you can't produce light of any kind, you better prepare your anus. To take this even further, we also need to keep in mind that Fumikage has virtually no control over Dark Shadow in complete darkness. At least, not right now. But what if, down the line, Fumikage was able to control Dark Shadow while it's this powerful?
Oh my
I feel like
God,
this will likely be possible in the future after intense training. And after he's able to control this terrifying power, I believe Fumikage could easily be strong enough to stand with the top 10 heroes. So because of the overall versatility and destructive capabilities of this quirk, Dark Shadow will be our number 9.
Fair enough, can't argue with that, but yeah.
Dabi's unnamed flame quirk and Hellfire. These quirks belong to Dobby and Endeavor respectively. I just wanted to start this out by explaining that these quirks are different, and I completely understand that, but they are both fire-based and strikingly similar from what we've seen, so I'm just going to group them together for now. If it's ever revealed that one of these quirks is significantly stronger, then this would be a different story. But to start with the basics, both Hellflame and Dobby's quirk grant them the ability to generate flames from anywhere on their respective bodies. Dobby's flames are blue, while Endeavor's flames are orange. As far as what the quirks are capable of, we've seen a little bit more with Hellflame, so I'll start with Dobby's quirk. Dobby's quirk allows him to create blue flames, which were mentioned to be extremely hot.
Well, yeah.
So it's
blue
possible their blue color
really
could
hot.
mean that they are hotter than Endeavor's flames, but that's just a possibility. From what we've seen, Dobby is able to produce an immense amount of these flames with little to no effort from any part of his body, and these flames also travel rather quickly, as seen from when he touched a tree in the forest, and a large forest fire quickly spread, creating a huge wall of flames in a very short time. Other than that, we really haven't seen too much else with Dobby's quirk. But I feel like the majority of things Endeavor can do, Dobby could also do. So let's move over to Endeavor's quirk. Hellfire. Like Dobby's quirk, Hellfire also allows Endeavor to generate and control flames from anywhere.
It's cool how he manages to propel himself with his feet and that,
like, has also been shown to shoot concentrated fire, such as fireballs, lances, or just straight up fire blasts. It's also been shown that Endeavor is apparently immune to any other fire-related abilities. In the anime, it was shown that his flames were also hot enough to disintegrate enemies at the cellular level. Endeavor can also use his fire to propel his fist, increasing the force of his punches, along with being able to concentrate his fire to the point of it being heavily pressurized.
When he was fighting that thing, man, it's just like,
fire that was capable of stopping a highly regenerative ability of an advanced Nomu. The only downfall of this quirk would be the fact that using Hellfire too much, or too recklessly, will cause the user's body temperature to increase to dangerous levels, greatly impairing Endeavor's physical abilities. If this was used to an even greater extent than that, it's likely Endeavor could end up killing himself. So this quirk is something you certainly don't want to go up against. My reasoning for these quirks is simply surrounding the fact that fire is such a deadly element. In almost any medium, whether it be anime, movies, or even the real world, fire is one of the most destructive things to exist, as all it does is destroy everything in its path, unless you're able to control the flames. Even just looking at the massive forest fires happening in California at the time of making this video, we can see the destructive power that fire possesses.
It's ridiculous, man.
So many acres of land has been completely scorched, to the point where it's bigger than entire cities. And as we saw with how quickly Dobby was able to cause such a large forest fire, he or Endeavor could do something like this on a much larger scale if they wanted to. Fire is also capable of burning people to death, or as Endeavor can do, burn them down to the cellular level until nothing is left. I did a quick bit of scientific research to determine how hot fire can get to give you some idea of just how powerful and how dangerous Endeavor and Dobby can be. For Dobby, since his flames are blue, that means at base level, if his colored fire is anything like the real world, his flames would burn at around 1400 degrees Celsius or 2600 degrees Fahrenheit, which is more than enough to kill a person. But this level of heat could actually melt metal, as metal usually melts around 1370 degrees Celsius or 2500
there you go, so it's
degrees
slightly
Fahrenheit.
hotter than that.
So already that's just a testament to how deadly fire can be. But that's just the beginning. When we move over to Endeavor, since he can completely disintegrate the body of highly regenerative Nomu at a cellular level, and very quickly, mind you, we can assume his flames could burn as hot as 35,000 degrees Celsius, or 63,032 degrees Fahrenheit. I came to this conclusion by researching how hot fire would need to be to cremate a human being, and that number was 982 degrees Celsius, or 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. However, However, at this temperature, it would take 1 to 3 hours for the body to be completely reduced to
and
ash.
this thing is regenerating.
So after converting the temperatures and the time, researchers concluded that it's possible to cremate a body completely in only 5 minutes if the temperatures were set to 35,359 degrees Celsius or 63,678 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay.
And because Endeavour was able to disintegrate this Nomu in much less than 5 minutes, we can only assume his fire can burn at temperatures even higher than that, which is quite hard to comprehend. So with all that heat behind at least one, or potentially both of these quirks, I can't help but think that these two have some of the strongest and most deadly quirks out there.
I can't really argue with this list. At first you're like, wait, what? And then it's like, okay.
We can already see how both of these quirks can be used for good and for evil respectively, just by watching the events of the story play out with both of them. So in conclusion, because of just how dangerous and deadly fire can be to both the environment and people, I feel it is without a doubt one of the strongest quirks in the series. There are also very few quirks that could even compete with fire without being at a disadvantage, so that's just a bonus.
Well, he's screwed.
Because of all that, these two quirks burn in at number 8. Number 7, Creation. This quirk belongs to Momo.
Pretty OP ability, this, to be fair.
Allows its user to create any object, including organic material, from any part of their body. However, this excludes living creatures of any kind. This is done by breaking down body fat at the molecular level, which is then converted into the material Momo uses to create various objects. The only requirement, aside from body fat, is that the user needs to understand the atomic configuration of the object they're about to create.
They need to know what it looks
without
like.
the atomic configuration of an object, it's impossible for the user to create it, even if they can visualize it and how it works. Similar to Manifest, Creation is a quirk with literally endless possibilities. However, Creation allows the user to do a tad bit more than Manifest, which is why it's higher on the list already. The main difference between those two quirks being that Creation creates various objects for use outside the body, while Manifest alters the user's own body. Because Creation is so versatile in terms of every little thing it could possibly create, it could be used as a very heroic or villainous tool, both of which could cause massive amounts of destruction depending on the objects that could be created. For instance, if the user really wanted to, they could legitimately create nukes out of their body.
Crazy.
That right there should be enough to explain why this could be so powerful. But
when you
aside
think
from
about
that,
it, Jesus
even
Christ.
on smaller scale, in any situation the user could create any weapon they wanted
to defend
pull
themselves,
a minigun out of their chest, create an RPG on the spot. It's honestly endless possibilities, and we could be here all day thinking of hypotheticals. Because of all the potential weapons this quirk could create, along with all the potential helpful objects it could also create, I have no choice but to think it's not only one of the most versatile quirks, but also one of the strongest in the series.
It's definitely
especially
up there, isn't
considering right now Momo is rather inexperienced, meaning a more experienced user could do so much more than she already has.
When she's older, she's going to be someone you don't mess with, man.
Although this quirk may be quite strong and useful, I cannot place it any higher on this list because it does have a few downfalls. First, because it requires body fat, Momo is required to eat quite a bit of junk food, so that she always has a healthy
like
amount
with,
of body fat to use
Manifest,
for creation at any given moment.
To eat the stuff.
So if the user doesn't severely overeat, it's pretty likely they're not going to have much material for creation. On that note, it's possible that overuse of this quirk could also exhaust the user's body fat completely, to the point that it takes other organic material like muscle instead, meaning that if the user is very reckless, it could end up causing permanent damage to their body or even death. The other main downfall would be that the user needs to understand the atomic configuration, which sounds a lot easier than it actually is. This means the user needs to likely individually research and experiment with each individual object until they understand its configuration, meaning the user needs to be somewhat intelligent to use this quirk even at base level. Luckily, Momo is quite smart. In fact, knowledge is her true power. But even so, she still has a long way to go before she's pulling nukes out of her chest. So if the quirk's owner was a bit mentally challenged, they'd essentially have a worthless quirk. So because of how many useful, powerful, and deadly objects the user could create with this quirk, it is without a doubt one of the strongest in the series. But due to its drawbacks and prerequisites, before even being able to use the quirk effectively, I cannot place it any higher than number 7.
Fair enough.
Number 6.
What we got 6?
Black Hole. This quirk belongs
of course.
to 13.
Jesus Christ, what an ability.
This quirk allows its user to create small black holes through the tips of their fingers that can suck anything in and disintegrate it at the atomic level. This also includes forms of energy, such as light. 13 generally uses this quirk to clean up any messes or destruction caused by hero-related incidents. So essentially, they use it for disaster relief. However, although 13 uses this quirk for cleaning, it could easily be used to kill anyone by sucking them into the black hole.
Yeah.
This one is pretty straightforward. Black hole allows the user to literally create a black hole. Although the black hole is only the size of a fingertip, that's more than enough to cause a massive amount of destruction as a villain. Or like we see with 13, perform multiple tasks such as disaster relief, or potentially even stopping some of the strongest villains as a hero.
That's crazy.
While 13 itself isn't exactly cut out for combat, this quirk easily could be. All you need to do is open up a black hole, point at your enemy, and bam, they gonna get sucked in and die. Unless, of course, it's a rare case like Kurogiri, who can turn your own power against you. While there are no exact measurements of how powerful the gravitational pull of a black hole is, a normal-sized black hole contains more mass than your average star. And when the star itself actually collapses into a black hole, it sucks multiple stars into it, or sometimes even entire galaxies.
Jesus.
And these are just the smaller black holes, mind you. So on a much smaller scale of a fingertip, we can assume that the gravitational pull is still immense, and anything that is caught in this gravitational pull is basically screwed. And that's why I believe this quirk is so powerful. Not only is its power absolute, in the fact that you will die if you are sucked into it, but once you are caught in its gravitational pull, there's basically no escape. So this could be an insanely powerful and scary weapon if used with villainous intentions. You could legitimately walk up to a skyscraper
and then just suck it in, just like,
people in
and they're all
it,
dead.
And just start sucking
they're
the
all
whole
gone.
thing bit by bit into the black hole, subsequently also killing everyone
Oh my
inside.
God.
And because it also sucks in energy as well, heroes like Endeavor wouldn't be able to stop you because you'd also be able to suck up any fire that he threw at you.
Yeah, like the
so
air.
Because of all that, I have no choice but to consider this one of the strongest quirks. However, I cannot place it any higher on this list because of its few drawbacks. Mainly that these black holes can only be pointed in one direction at a time, so someone could easily get behind you and stop you from causing any more harm. The other drawback being that this power could easily end up killing friend or foe alike if it gets out of control. Or potentially even worse, it could end up sucking its own user into itself like an actual black hole collapsing. So because of how deadly black hole can be, even with its drawbacks, I have no choice but to make it our number 6 list. Number 5. Half hot, half cold. This quirk belongs to Shoto Todoroki.
What ability.
This quirk allows its user to create and control both fire and ice. In Todoroki's case, the entire right side of his body is ice, while the left side is fire. To use this quirk to its full extent, it requires Todoroki to simultaneously heat and cool his body properly, as using fire will raise his body temperature, and using ice will lower it. So the biggest challenge is finding that correct balance so the user doesn't accidentally get frostbite or end up with a heat stroke, both of which are possible side effects with incorrect or overuse. Especially if the user is exerting one side more than the other, it's pretty important to still use the other half to cool
he was
or
using
heat
the
the
ice
power so things don't go south.
just using the ice though at one
In terms of
point.
what each side is capable of, we haven't seen a whole lot with the fire side, simply because Todoroki refused to use it to spite his father for at least 10 years. So he still needs a bit of training with it before we can see what the flames are truly capable of. However, because this quirk was passed down or developed through his father's Hellfire quirk that we discussed earlier, it's pretty likely that with training, Todoroki's flames could do pretty much anything Endeavor could do with Hellfire.
But then the ice on top of it, boom.
Already deserves to be on this list without even counting his other side, which is mainly why this quirk is much
the ice
higher
can
up
just
on the
like
list.
move.
So when it comes to his ice half, we've seen a lot of impressive stuff.
Yes.
Because Todoroki was only using the ice half for 10 years, he's capable of doing the following to an expert level. create enough ice
like,
almost
doing that was
instantly
just like,
to cover entire buildings and streets, create enormous waves of ice, or even craft the ice to create barriers or various other objects. He's also so skilled to the point where he can control the temperature of the ice, making it cold enough to freeze someone to death or restricting himself
just
to keep them
like,
at a temperature where they can stay alive.
A little bit.
His precision with the ice is also top tier, as he's able to selectively freeze special targets or even specific spots of an enemy with one swift movement. He also has a super move where he can create an enormous wall of ice. However, the only downfall is that it brings his body temperature down so low that he's out of commission so he can heat himself back up. Now, like I said before, this quirk is already on the list because of its fire abilities, based on what we said about Hellfire and Dobby's quirk earlier, but this one gets a place higher up on the list simply because of the fact it can likely do everything those quirks can do, but so much more. There's really no point in repeating myself about all the things Todoroki can do with his ice, but simply put, with all that destructive firepower already, it's only an added bonus to be able to use this ice effectively for offense or defense, or even to freeze people to death almost instantly. This power could easily make Todoroki the #1 hero just like his father hopes. Or if he somehow took a more sinister turn, he would be virtually unstoppable as a villain. I really don't know what else to say about this one, because unfortunately I can't really see much room for improvement on the ice side of the spectrum, so I can't think of any more possibilities, other than maybe one day with more training, Todoroki will be able to take things to absolute zero, which would be extremely broken, and if that ever happens, I might have to put this higher on the list than #5, especially because this quirk does have weaknesses like I listed earlier, but with training and patience, those weaknesses could be easy
all the
to
young
overcome.
ones,
So
when
they
they're
aren't
older, are
even
going to be
that big
so
of a downfall like
freaking
some of the others on
OP.
this list. But
they
regardless,
perfected their
with
quirks.
fire and ice, this quirk is by far one of the best and strongest in the series. And it would be higher on this list, but unfortunately the quirks above this one are just simply stronger. So unfortunately, although I'd like to give this one more credit, for now it's frozen in place at #5. #4. Brainwashing.
There we go.
This quirk belongs to Hitoshi Shinzo. Brainwashing allows its user to completely control anyone who answers one of the user's questions verbally, which will then allow the user to verbally command the brainwashed victim to do whatever he wants. The user is also able to selectively decide when he wants to control someone. So for instance, he can ask you questions normally, and answering them will not end up brainwashing you so long as Shinzo wills it not to.
That's class, and then he waits later.
A limit to how long someone can remain brainwashed has not been shown. However, it is possible for Shinzo to control multiple people at once. While the victim is being brainwashed, they are essentially conscious within their own mind, but in a daze of sorts. So they can't call out or do anything except just accept the fact that they are being controlled. It should be noted that after a victim is no longer being controlled, pretty much all of them had no memory of what happened while they were being controlled, but they did realize they were being controlled after being released from said control.
Right.
The only two downfalls would be the fact that the potential victim is only controlled if they answer the question or speak. So if the potential victim remains silent, they cannot be controlled. The other downfall being the fact that a large amount of sudden pain to the victim is enough to snap them out of their brainwashed state. Let me take a second here to say Izuku's quirk ghosts, snapping him out of his brainwashing is complete horseshit. There is no way in hell any normal person under control of this quirk could do something like that. F*** you, Izuku. That was an ass pull from pure plot armor, and you know it, which is cheating. However, if someone were to say, throw a large rock at the brainwashed victim, I would call that fair game for breaking the control. But not what Izuku did. Only villains do that. So with all that in mind, I think most of us can probably imagine why this quirk is one of the strongest. Although it doesn't have any abnormal strength or anything like that, it has the potential to wreak havoc on the world, or the potential to stop almost any villain.
That was the interesting thing though, wasn't it? It's like everyone judged him as if he was going to be a bad guy.
If you ask any question to an anime villain, they're just going to pull out that talk no jutsu for at least 2 episodes.
Yeah.
But that aside, just think of all the potential things you could force people to do. You could force them to attempt to assassinate celebrities or important government officials.
He doesn't want to be a bad guy. I like that
shooting,
little touch
or even
on it.
force them to take their own life. and all they can do is just scream inside their head as their body pulls the trigger.
Crazy.
You could do some really evil stuff with this power, which makes me a bit happy that Shinzo is on the good side of things, at least for now.
That, yeah.
As a hero, this quirk would also be really useful to force villains to turn themselves into the police, among many other things. So basically, this quirk has endless possibilities, both good but mainly evil in terms of what it could make people do. The only catch, once again, would be that it's possible to avoid this simply by not speaking. So if you were on a quest for world domination, it would only take one previously controlled victim to tell the world how they were brainwashed, and boom! Nobody would ever speak. Therefore,
just don't ever talk to him. Don't ever answer any of his questions.
I suppose it's also possible that this brain control has a predetermined time limit, in which case this quirk may not be as good depending on how long that time actually might be. Or maybe there's even a limited range on how far away a victim has to be before they are no longer brain controlled. But even with those downfalls, I still believe this quirk is without a doubt one of the most powerful, just considering the possibilities of what it could make people do.
Yep.
But because of the downfalls and the quirks that are above this one, it will remain silent at number 4. Number 3. Overhaul. This quirk belongs to Kai Chisaki. Overhaul allows its user to disassemble and reassemble anything.
It's crazy.
From living things to inanimate objects, which can only be done through physical contact with the user's hands. After disassembling something, the user is also able to reassemble it differently from its original form. This disassembling and reassembling can be anything from touching a person and making them explode, or killing them in some other brutal fashion, fusing them to another object, curing someone's illnesses, reviving people, per se, by reassembling them back to a living state of being, fusing himself with other people or objects, and even restructure any part of the environment, such as the surrounding floor. And that's just scratching the surface of what this quirk could possibly do. So needless to say, this quirk is pretty broken.
Yeah, it is.
Basically, anything you can possibly touch can be destroyed, rebuilt, or just completely restructured to your own liking. From the environment to any living creature, let alone the fact you can basically bring people back from the dead or cure most illnesses. I really don't need to go any further to explain why this quirk is beyond powerful, so I could just stop here. Although this was never really clarified in the manga, it might also be possible for Chisaki to use more than one quirk by fusing himself with another person or people. If that were possible, he can use this quirk would be next level broken. But I feel that this is likely not the case. However, as we saw during this fusion, Chisaki is able to gain even more physical strength and speed, and also additional limbs and weapons. So Chisaki could also fuse various weapons into
the hand thing when it talks is using that quirk that he's fused
with fusion, it's pretty broken just like everything else in this quirk. I honestly don't even know what else to say about this quirk, because it just has so much potential with all the things it could disassemble and reassemble. The only downfalls with this quirk are the fact that it requires physical contact with Chisaki's hands. So if he can't get up close and personal, there's not much he can do.
If he can't use his hands...
restructure the ground underneath his enemies
that was so cool.
trap them so he can just waltz up and reassemble them into a pile of goo. So even his downfall is basically broken. Just everything about this quirk is broken as heck. The only true downfall is that this quirk can only be used with Chisaki's hands. And as we saw in the manga, his hands were cut off. So basically, he's now a quirkless man. So the only possible way to truly get around this quirk is to cut off the user's hands. Should be easy enough, right?
That was so
mind.
Epic.
We've also already seen from a villain's point of view just how deadly this quirk can be. But as a hero, this quirk would also be just as useful. You could be a doctor, reassembling people's bodies without their illnesses or physical problems. You could restructure various building material into a house as a construction worker in mere seconds. Or this power could just be a useful way of catching villains by restructuring them to death and then just reviving them in prison, among many other things.
Wow.
Bottom line with Overhaul, this quirk is extremely deadly, but also extremely useful, making it one of the strongest and overall best quirks in the entire series. They had to get rid of him, didn't they? Like,
the possibilities it was a cool
are honestly
person
just
to bring in
endless,
that,
and
but
the quirk has quite the advantage
could keep
in
that
almost
around.
any situation. so long as there is literally anything that the user can touch
little
with their
revenge
hands,
moment for,
which in most cases you have at least
is his
the
name
ground.
Kurosaki?
For those reasons,
I'm terrible
I
with
believe
names.
this quirk is our number 3 for the strongest quirk in the series. And while you might think that this quirk should be higher based on how broken it is, there are still 2 quirks that I believe are stronger. Number 2. All for One and One for All. These quirks belong to All for One and Izuku Midoriya, respectively. Let's start with All for One. All for One is a quirk that allows the user to steal another person's quirk and use it as their own.
Which is crazy.
The number of quirks they can steal is also seemingly infinite.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to have like a limit on it.
As many quirks as they like. This also allows them to mix and match various quirks to come up with techniques that originally would not be possible without the use of various quirks. The additional ability of this quirk is that the user can also gift quirks to another individual, so it can both give and take. While not known for sure, it appears that it's also possible for them to transfer the actual All for One quirk as well. However, we have yet to see this actually happen. Now, on the other side, when it comes to One for All, this quirk was actually created on accident by All for One. In the past, All for One gifted a quirk that could stockpile power to his seemingly quirkless younger brother. Unbeknownst to him, his younger brother already had a quirk that could be transferred to others. These 2 quirks then formed together to create One for All. The exact abilities of One for All are unknown, as it could actually do one of 2 things that has yet to be confirmed. Either A, it gets gradually stronger over time as it's passed from user to user, or B, it gets stronger by passing from person to person, but instead of just getting stronger over time, it gets stronger by taking the person's natural quirk and absorbing it into One for All, essentially meaning it's stockpiling the overall power of other quirks into one powerhouse as it passes from user to user.
He was
so for
quirkless.
Instance, say One for All is passed
He's not really
to
passed
someone
on
who naturally
anything different
has a
to
super strength quirk. One for All will then absorb the super strength quirk into itself, making One for All stronger than it was previously, and then it can be passed on to another person and absorb that quirk, and so on. Like I said, we don't know which of these 2 possibilities it actually is, but either one leads to the same outcome, which is the quirk getting stronger as it is passed on one way or another. This quirk also cannot be passed on unless the current user wills it to happen, so it's fairly likely that this quirk cannot be stolen by All for One. Now, in terms of what it can actually do, All Might is the best example of this quirk's potential, considering Izuku is still grasping how to use it properly. One for All allowed All Might to be essentially invincible. Not completely, as he still suffered grave wounds from All for One, but in general this quirk allowed him to save thousands and thousands of people, and also defeat numerous villains. In fact, All Might was completely undefeated all the way up to his retirement as a hero. This was all possible due to his amazing strength, speed, and endurance that One for All provided him. And as we've been led to believe, this power grows stronger as it gets passed on. So considering All Might is the 8th user, we can assume Izuku is going to be capable of even more as the 9th. I could go over each individual technique we've seen with All for One, but that would be just wasting unnecessary time, considering we've already been here for a while. But if you guys have seen the anime or read the manga, which I assume you have if you're watching this, you know what deadly techniques One for All is capable of producing.
It's just so powerful.
Now, as to why these 2 quirks are tied at number 2, I believe both of these quirks are pretty evenly matched.
They're just as strong as each other,
at the very least, they have the potential to be. All for One is an extremely scary power, because its user can steal any power they want. They could even steal every power if they really wanted to, making it so any hero or villain that tries to stop them are automatically rendered completely helpless. And that's not even including all the scary techniques this quirk is capable of producing due to all the quirks it has stolen. It's essentially unstoppable and unrivaled. For instance, just picture this. Every single quirk I listed previously on this list is stolen by All for One.
Damn.
That means all of the strongest quirks in the series and all the scary stuff they're already capable of doing is now mixed and mashed together for even more scary techniques.
Wow.
It basically means this quirk is capable of taking over the world. However, as we saw, it is possible to defeat All for One, and so far the only way to actually do that is with an unstealable quirk, which is One for All. Due to all the built-up strength from transferring it from person to person, the user of One for All is now strong enough to take on All for One and win. even with all those immeasurably scary techniques that All For One can throw at you. One For All is still capable of taking it down, simply with the power of many condensed quirks or just stockpiling power over time. While One For All may essentially just be overwhelming brute strength in the grand scheme of things, that's all you need to take on the deadliest quirks, especially with the added endurance and speed, and whatever other techniques One For All grants. Basically, what I'm saying is, although One For All may seem pretty simple compared to the others on this list, there's a reason All Might was undefeated and the pillar of justice. And that's because his strength is so great and he's basically capable of doing more damage than a lot of people on this list, and that is saying something. However, with all that being said, there is one downfall that both of these quirks suffer from: requiring other quirks to function.
Right,
if there were no other quirks in the My Hero Academia world, or the quirks just naturally died out, All For One would no longer have anything to steal, and essentially just be a quirkless man if he were never able to steal quirks in the first place. And One For All is completely reliant on the fact that it was gifted another quirk in the first place, because without receiving another quirk from All For One, this quirk wouldn't even exist. And it also needs to be passed on to others to truly achieve its potential, which could be another issue. Because theoretically, the current user of One For All could decide not to pass it on and die. Then boom, that's gone. The end of that. However, depending on how the actual stockpiling aspect of One For All works, it could potentially make up for this if the quirk simply grows stronger with every person who claims ownership of it. For instance, you could simply pass it from person to person as quickly as possible to store up immeasurable strength in a short time. I'm pretty confident that it doesn't work that way, because that would be pretty stupid and broken, but it's just a possibility. So bottom line with these two, they are both monster quirks in their own way. In terms of just the quirks itself, I would reckon All For One is naturally a better and stronger quirk than One For All, but One For All has the potential to not only beat All For One, but surpass its destructive capabilities. So because of that, All For One and One For All are tied at number 2. At this point, you must be wondering what could possibly be above these two, because those two quirks are basically unbeatable, so what could top that? And the moment that you've all been waiting for, number 1. Rewind. This quirk belongs to Eri. Rewind allows its user to rewind an individual's body to a previous state, which can be any previous state. We've seen that Eri was able to rewind Chisaki so he was no longer fused with Shin, constantly rewind Izuku's damage caused from using One For All at 100%, or even rewind someone to the point where they never even existed. This is done from both physical contact with Eri and also anything in her vicinity.
If she knew how to control that ability, like, Jesus.
The horn on her head, which will glow when using her power. Not much is known about the power right now due to lack of information and the fact that Eri is young and inexperienced, but this quirk is broken! You thought the previous quirks were overpowered? Oh boy! Does this one top that? You can basically defeat any person, any quirk, no matter who or what it is. You could even defeat All For One and All Might with this power, simply by rewinding them to a state where they didn't have their powers, or even further to the point where they didn't even exist. The only downfall of this quirk is the fact that its current user is so young and inexperienced. If someone had this quirk and was experienced with it, both hero or villain alike, they would be undefeated. The only potential way to stop them would be to try and assassinate them at a distance, because anything at close range is toast. Since Eri was shown to use this ability on people who weren't even touching her, we can also assume this power could be trained to the point where the radius is expanded to a decent distance, which means anyone within a certain range has the potential to no longer exist at any point in time. You can disagree with me if you want, but personally I don't see how this quirk isn't the strongest.
You can't beat it. If she could use it properly,
to take down the strongest hero and the strongest villain in an instant, let alone every other person. If that is not the definition of the strongest, if that is not overpowered, if that is not broken as heck, I don't know what is. But with that, Rewind is my pick for the strongest quirk in My Hero Academia.
Jesus, what a list.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and hopefully you agree with my list. If you didn't, that's okay too, because opinions are subjective, of course. But be sure to comment below what your top 10 strongest quirks would be, and why.
We'll check out the top 10 worst next.
Also be sure to drop a like if you enjoyed the video, because once again, as soon as this video hits 3,000 likes, I will add the top 10 worst quirks in My Hero Academia to my to-do list. So if you guys want to see that that video eventually happen, well, be sure to United States of smash that like button.
Nice.
Also, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell so you can be notified when that video comes out, along with being notified whenever I upload new anime-related content. Be sure to follow me on Twitter to keep up with the channel or any other social media, links below as always.
That was cool. I like that list. That was a good list. Cannot argue with that list. Like, as soon as he starts explaining why and the potential and stuff, it's like, yeah, that's some broken shiz. But, yeah, that was cool. Having the rewind thing definitely up there as well. I'm sure I said at the start, it's like, that was something up there. Eraserhead wasn't on there, but I suppose, yeah, there's too much in there. Like, he makes eye contact with you, gone. If he blinks, you got your ability back. So, yeah, all those abilities were pretty damn worthy of being on that list. So cool. Thank you guys very much for watching. We're going to check out top 10 worst quirks next. Until then, thank you for watching. What did you guys think of that? What did you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe, haven't already. Leave comments down below. Let me know what I should watch and discuss in future videos. And I will see you guys, yes, all you guys, next time. Bye. I just punched myself in the face. Ow. Bye.